My name is Dana Foster. I'm 41 years old, and I own a small breakfast diner in Rockford, Michigan. Just last month, my 17-year-old daughter devoted 9 straight hours to preparing a birthday dinner for 23 family members to celebrate my mother's 70th birthday. Then, at exactly 4:15 in the afternoon, one text message from my mother erased every bit of that effort. Plans have changed. We're going to a restaurant instead. Adults only. I didn't argue. I didn't call her. I didn't complain in the family group chat. Instead, I made one quiet decision. By 8:40 the following morning, my mother was standing outside my front door with a brown paper bag clutched in both hands, pressing my doorbell as if she wasn't sure she would be welcomed inside. For 70 years, nobody had ever made my mother wait outside a door. She had no idea what really happened that night. Or what had been building inside me for the previous 25 years. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is where quiet people finally decide they've been quiet long enough. Every story on this channel is about family, betrayal, respect, and the exact moment someone realizes peace isn't worth protecting anymore. If stories like that speak to you, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's go back to where all of this really began. Running a diner teaches you something most people never learn. There's a huge difference between customers and critics. Customers simply enjoy their meal. Critics judge every detail. Customers leave full. Critics leave opinions. And critics almost never leave tips. I bought the Blue Door Diner back in 2019 from the man I'd worked for since I was 19 years old. Ever since then, I've been standing behind the grill before sunrise, flipping pancakes and frying eggs long before most people even wake up. After enough mornings like that, you stop expecting applause. The griddle doesn't care whether anyone thanks you. Neither do I. But strangers forgetting to appreciate your work is one thing. Living inside a family where appreciation simply doesn't exist is something entirely different. That's the family I grew up in. My mother's world had rankings. Everything had a place. Every holiday. Every birthday. Every gathering. Someone always mattered more than someone else. There was the table reserved for the important people. Then there was everyone else. There were the relatives invited to stay after dinner. And the relatives who only learned there had even been an after party by seeing photographs later. My mother, Rose, managed every family event like she was running an organization instead of a household. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a position. And for nearly 25 years. Mine never changed. I cooked. I hosted. I prepared meals. I organized celebrations. I made holidays happen. When Easter came around, I cooked the ham. When bridal showers needed hosting, they happened at my house. Thanksgiving? I handled that too. The year Mom's kitchen was under renovation. And the following year when it wasn't. Nobody actually asked me. Because asking would have meant recognizing what I contributed. Instead, it was simply expected. Meanwhile, my brother Paul could walk through the front door carrying 1 bottle of wine. And somehow become the hero of the evening. I'd spend 3 days cooking. Only to hear someone ask, "Dana, where are the serving spoons?" No thank you. No appreciation. Just the next request. I'm not telling you this because I want sympathy. I'm telling you because you need to understand the environment my daughter grew up watching. In my family, I wasn't the favorite child. But I wasn't the problem child either. I was something much more convenient. I was the unpaid caterer. The painful part? It took watching my own daughter get hurt before I finally realized I'd been wearing that invisible apron my entire adult life. And that brings me to Lily. My daughter is 17. She's a high school senior. She isn't the type who constantly says, "I love you." Instead, she shows love by doing things. If your chair wobbles, she fixes it. If your phone battery dies, she plugs it in before you even notice. On busy Saturday mornings at the diner, she works beside me like she's been cooking professionally her whole life. She's been helping on weekends since she turned 15. And unlike the way I was raised, she gets paid fairly. Family doesn't mean free labor in my house. When my mother's 70th birthday started getting close, Lily didn't shop for jewelry. She didn't buy flowers. She didn't even buy a greeting card. She decided she wanted to cook an entire dinner herself. Not because anyone asked. Because she genuinely wanted to give her grandmother something unforgettable. Over the next 2 weeks, she quietly contacted every relative one at a time. Each message contained only one question. What's one meal you remember loving at family gatherings? She collected every answer. Aunt Janet immediately requested chicken and dumplings. My younger cousins begged for baked macaroni and cheese with that crispy golden top everyone fights over. As for my mother, Lily already knew the answer. Rose had spent decades telling anyone who would listen about her own grandmother's peach cobbler. According to Mom, nobody had ever managed to recreate it correctly. So Lily found an old version online. Then spent days testing recipes until she finally created one that filled my kitchen with the exact smell of childhood fairs and summer afternoons. She paid for every ingredient herself. Over $340. Money she'd earned through babysitting and weekend shifts at the diner. At the grocery store, I tried slipping my debit card into the payment machine. She gently pushed my hand away. It's supposed to be my gift, Mom. When something costs you personally, it means more. 17 years old. And already understanding generosity better than many adults ever do. She even hand-lettered place cards for every guest. All 23 of them. She had taught herself calligraphy through online videos. The card for my mother was larger than the others. Decorated with a gold border. One she redrew twice because the first lines weren't perfectly straight. Watching her work, I honestly believed I was seeing the very best part of our family. Everything kind. Everything generous. Everything hopeful. Condensed into one dinner. I had absolutely no idea that my mother was only days away from destroying it. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. I didn't blindly walk my daughter into this situation. I know my mother. I've known how she operates my entire life. That's why, 3 weeks before the party, I made sure everything was confirmed in writing. I texted her. Birthday dinner at our house. Saturday the 14th, 6 o'clock. Lily is cooking the entire meal for you. Her response came back almost immediately. Fine. Not. That's wonderful. Not. Tell Lily thank you. Just one word. Fine. After years of dealing with my mother, I understood exactly what that word meant. It wasn't enthusiasm. It wasn't gratitude. It was caution. A yellow light. Still. A week later, during Sunday lunch, I asked again. This time in front of other people. Mom, we're all set for Saturday, right? Our house. Lily's dinner. Without even looking up, she casually waved her hand. Of course. Then she turned toward her friend Sandra, who had stopped by to drop something off, and said. Dana's house is cozy. She smiled. Sandra smiled too. It wasn't the kind of smile that reaches someone's eyes. It was polite. Practiced. In my mother's vocabulary, cozy wasn't a compliment. It meant small. Ordinary. Not impressive enough. I heard it. I recognized it. But I translated it into something easier to live with. She's just being old-fashioned. Once she tastes Lily's cooking, everything will be fine. That's what daughters do when they've spent decades explaining away their mother's sharp edges. I'd become fluent in her language. The problem with fluency is that eventually you stop noticing the insults. You simply interpret them into something less painful. Looking back, that single word, cozy, was the first crack in everything. I just didn't realize it yet. The morning of the birthday dinner began before sunrise. Lily was already awake before I came downstairs. And I normally wake up at 4:30 every morning. By 7 o'clock, my kitchen looked like a professional restaurant. Every station had labels. Mixing bowls lined up perfectly. Ingredients measured. Cooking schedule taped to the cabinet door. Everything timed backward from 6 o'clock dinner service. Chicken and dumplings simmered slowly for Aunt Janet. The baked macaroni waited to go into the oven. Fresh rolls were rising beneath towels. Green beans were prepared exactly the way my late father loved them. Lily said she wanted him to feel included somehow, even though he wasn't there anymore. The peach cobbler, her masterpiece, was timed to come out warm just after dinner started. She wanted the smell to fill the entire house the moment everyone sat down. My husband, Mark, spent the day making endless supply runs. Ice. Extra butter. More folding chairs. More drinks. Every time he came back, Lily handed him another list. I mostly stayed out of her way. For someone who has spent years running a diner kitchen, standing back and letting someone else take control isn't easy. But watching your child confidently run your kitchen, that's a different kind of pride. Around 3 o'clock, Lily finally untied her apron. She washed her hands, sat at the dining table, and finished the last few place cards. 23 names, written by hand, one after another. Her handwriting became steadier with every card. When she finished my mother's, she carefully added one last gold line around the edge. Then she leaned back, looked around the room, and smiled. Just a small smile. The kind people don't realize they're making. 9 hours of work. 1 beautifully prepared table. 6 homemade dishes. Everything ready. For just 1 second, she allowed herself to feel proud. At exactly 4:15, my phone vibrated. I remember the time because I happened to glance at the oven timer. Without even seeing who it was, I somehow knew. I picked up the phone. The first message had gone to the entire family group chat. 23 people received it. Only afterward, 45 seconds later, my mother sent me a separate message. I checked the timestamps later. That detail still stays with me. She wanted everyone else to know before she told me. The group message said, "Plans have changed. Sandra surprised me by reserving a private dining room at Antonelli's. Dinner will be there tonight at 7. Adults only. Looking forward to seeing everyone." Then my private message arrived. "You can bring the cobbler if you want." That was it. No apology. No explanation. No mention of Lily. No acknowledgement that a 17-year-old had just spent 9 hours cooking. Just adults only. I stared at the screen. Read it once. Twice. 3 times. Trying to convince myself I had misunderstood. Upstairs, Lily was getting dressed. On my stove, 6 finished dishes sat waiting. On my dining room table, 23 handwritten place cards were already arranged, including the one with the gold border. I immediately called my mother. No answer. Straight to voicemail. I already knew where she was. Earlier that afternoon she'd posted a picture from the salon. Fresh silver curls. Perfect makeup. Caption: 70 and fabulous. I called again. Nothing. Finally I texted. "Mom, Lily has spent all day cooking for you. Everything is ready. Please call me. 9 minutes later. A reply appeared. Not a phone call. Just another text. Please don't make this difficult. Sandra has gone to a lot of trouble. A restaurant is much more appropriate. Adults only. There it was again. Adults only. Not an accident. Not careless wording. A decision. A rule. I slowly placed my phone face down on the counter. Then turned toward the kitchen. Trying to figure out how I was supposed to tell my daughter. Except I didn't have to. She was already standing there. Still wearing the dress she'd bought for the evening. Her own phone in her hand. She'd seen the message herself. Of course she had. She was one of the 23 people in that group chat. She read it one more time. Set her phone down. Picked up the sugar shaker. And quietly finished dusting the top of the peach cobbler. Without looking at me. She spoke. Softly. Calmly. It's okay, Mom. I'm used to it. Those 4 words hit harder than any tears ever could. 17 years old. 9 hours of love poured into one gift. And her first instinct wasn't to complain. It was to comfort me. Standing there. I suddenly started remembering things I'd spent years trying not to think about. The dance recital Grandma skipped. The birthday party she rescheduled because brunch mattered more. The swim meet nobody attended. Every disappointment. Every excuse. Every single time I'd knelt beside Lily and said, Grandma loves you. She just has her own way of showing it. Be patient. I'd always believed I was protecting my daughter. Standing in my kitchen that afternoon, I finally realized what I'd actually been teaching her. I'd taught her that disappointment was normal. That being overlooked was normal. That love came with conditions. And worst of all, I'd taught her to accept it. Because every time my mother hurt her, I'd translated the pain into something easier to swallow. At 4:15 that afternoon, watching my daughter quietly finish decorating the dessert she'd no longer get to serve, I understood something that changed me forever. The family rules hadn't just shaped me. I'd unknowingly passed them down. Looking back now, I realized something painful. My mother didn't create this pattern overnight. She had been building it for decades. And somehow, I had spent my entire life helping her maintain it. Growing up, every holiday in our family looked the same. There were always 2 tables. The beautiful dining table sat in the formal room. Polished wood. Matching chairs. Candles. Cloth napkins. The important table. Then there was the folding card table tucked away in the den. Plastic surface. Metal legs. Usually one chair that wobbled. That was where the children sat. I ate at that card table until I was 23 years old. 23. The year I got engaged to Mark. Only then did my mother finally announce that I had been promoted to the dining room. Promoted. As if earning a fiancé somehow made me worthy of eating with the adults. My cousin Rachel never received that promotion. Eventually she stopped attending family gatherings altogether. At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Now, I wonder if she simply saw the truth years before I did. Everything in my mother's world had a ranking. Hosting Easter wasn't just hosting Easter. It was status. Who carved the turkey mattered. Who poured the wine mattered. Who sat closest to her mattered. Everything meant something. When my father was still alive, he quietly tried to soften it. Whenever Mom wasn't looking, he'd slip me the biggest dinner roll. Save me the last piece of pie. Smile across the room as if to say, I see you. After he passed away 6 years earlier, that little balance disappeared. My mother's rules became even stricter. Grief didn't make her softer. It made her cling even harder to control. But here's something important. I don't want to paint my mother like a villain from a movie. Because she isn't. People are rarely that simple. She remembered every grandchild's birthday. She knew everyone's shoe size. If someone ended up in the hospital, she was always the first person there. When my diner flooded a couple of years earlier, she arrived before sunrise wearing rubber boots. Worked beside me for 2 straight days, cleaning mud and water. Never once asked for recognition afterward. My mother knew how to show love through work. She simply couldn't separate love from hierarchy. Everything had to fit inside her system. For years, I'd translated that behavior into something harmless. That's just how mom is. She's old-fashioned. She means well. But standing in my kitchen that afternoon, phone still lying on the counter, watching steam rise from 6 untouched dishes, one question suddenly entered my mind. A question I'd somehow never asked in 41 years. Who decided these rules? Who taught my mother that families were supposed to work like this? Meanwhile, the family group chat reacted exactly the way families like mine always react. Silence. A couple of thumbs up emojis. Someone commented, "Sounds nice." Nobody questioned the change. Nobody mentioned Lily. Nobody asked what would happen to the dinner she'd spent all day preparing. But privately, the messages started arriving. Because everyone immediately realized what adults only actually meant. My cousin Beth had 3 young children. Tyler had 2 kids himself. Finding a babysitter with only a few hours' notice on a Saturday wasn't realistic. Beth texted me first. "So, what exactly are we supposed to do? Leave the kids home alone?" A few minutes later Tyler's wife sent me a voice message. She started calmly. She did not finish calmly. By the end, she was referring to my mother with titles I definitely won't repeat here. As I stood reading those messages, something became obvious. My mother's last-minute decision hadn't only hurt Lily. It had quietly divided the entire family. Some people were welcome. Others suddenly weren't. The adults with social status got invitations. Parents with small children became an inconvenience. It was the same ranking system she'd used my entire life. Only this time, everyone watched it happen simultaneously. In writing. My phone kept buzzing. Question after question. Complaint after complaint. Confusion. Frustration. Meanwhile, upstairs, I heard a bedroom door close. Lily had gone to change out of the dress she'd been excited to wear. That sound, more than anything, broke something inside me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a rope that's been stretched for years finally snapping. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever watched someone dismiss your child's effort? With just one sentence? Maybe they skipped an important event. Forgot a birthday. Made a promise they never intended to keep. If you have, you know exactly how helpless that feels. A few minutes later, I called my brother Paul. Some part of me still believed that if both of us stood together, maybe our mother would actually listen. Paul answered almost immediately. Before I even finished explaining, he sighed. That familiar family sigh. "Dana. It's Mom's 70th birthday. Don't turn this into something bigger than it is." I stared at the kitchen wall. Bigger? Lily spent 9 hours cooking. His response came almost instantly. She's 17. Kids don't care about these things as much as adults think. I closed my eyes. He kept talking. It's one dinner. It's adults only. Just go. If you make this into a family argument, people are going to blame you. There it was. The sentence I'd heard in different forms my entire life. Don't upset the system. Keep everyone comfortable. Even if that means sacrificing yourself. I thanked him. Hung up. And crossed his name off the mental list of people I thought might stand beside me. Only one name remained. My husband. Mark walked through the front door, carrying another bag of ice. He immediately knew something was wrong. I handed him my phone. He read every message. Listened quietly while I explained everything. Then he said exactly what I expected. It's one night. We can survive one night. It's her birthday. Do you really want everyone talking about this? He wasn't defending my mother. He was defending peace. Because that's what reasonable people do. Especially inside families like mine. I didn't argue. Because years earlier, I would have given exactly the same advice. Then Mark walked into the kitchen. And stopped. Lily had changed back into sweatpants. The nice dress was gone. Without saying a word. She was carefully packing every dish into storage containers. One by one. Chicken and dumplings. Covered. Labeled. Into the refrigerator. Macaroni. Wrapped. Stored away. Fresh rolls. Bagged. Frozen. 9 hours of love. Being quietly packed away as leftovers. Mark didn't say anything. He simply watched his daughter. Then he slowly placed the bag of ice on the counter. Turned toward me. And asked the only question left. What are you going to do? I wish I could tell you I already knew the answer. I didn't. Not yet. But I knew one thing. Before I made any decision. My mother was getting one final opportunity to fix this. One last chance. And after that, whatever happened next, would be entirely her choice. Part 5. I found Lily sitting quietly on her bed. She had changed into sweatpants. The dress she'd been excited to wear was folded neatly beside her. Her phone rested face down on the blanket. Instead of crying, she was watching cooking videos without the sound. That was always her way. When something hurt, she disappeared into food. I sat beside her. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then I decided I wasn't translating anything anymore. No excuses. No softening. No pretending. I looked directly at her. Here's what I'm thinking. She turned toward me. I can still open our doors at 6 o'clock. Exactly like we planned. I can invite everyone. Kids included. Your grandmother will probably see it as a declaration of war. Some relatives may still choose the restaurant. We could end up serving 4 people instead of 23. And tomorrow. My phone is probably going to explode. I paused. Then added the most important part. But this isn't my dinner. It's yours. You cooked it. So this decision belongs to you too. She looked down at her hands. I could almost see her weighing everything. The empty chairs. The family gossip. The awkward conversations. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She understood exactly how our family worked. After nearly a minute, she finally looked back at me. If only 4 people come, she said quietly. I'm still serving every course. I smiled before I even realized I was smiling. Then she asked the question I'd been expecting. You'd really do that? To Grandma? I gently shook my head. No. I'm doing it for you. There's a difference. And maybe it's time I finally learned it. For the first time all afternoon. Something changed in her face. Not happiness. Hope. Just a little. But enough. She nodded once. Then let's cook. Not. Let's fight. Not. Let's prove anything. Simply. Let's cook. At that moment, the dinner became real again. Not because 23 people were guaranteed to come. Because one 17-year-old believed her work still mattered. I walked downstairs and sat at the kitchen counter with my phone. The family group chat sat open. 23 names. One blinking cursor. I started typing. Then deleted everything. My first draft was angry. It listed every disappointment from the past 25 years. Every forgotten birthday. Every missed recital. Every family gathering where someone had been ranked above someone else. Every painful memory. It felt satisfying. For about 30 seconds. Then I erased the entire thing. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to protect my daughter. Those weren't the same thing. The second draft was sarcastic. Interesting how 12 seats suddenly replaced 23. Hope everyone enjoys the promotion system. Delete. Sarcasm was my mother's language. I wasn't speaking it anymore. The third draft became an essay. Paragraph after paragraph explaining everything. Trying to help everyone understand. Trying to convince people. Trying to soften the truth. Halfway through reading it, I realized something. I was translating again. Explaining my mother's behavior. Explaining my own. Explaining everyone's feelings. Exactly what I'd done for 25 years. Delete. I placed the phone on the counter. Closed my eyes. Took one deep breath. Then I finally understood. An invitation doesn't argue. It doesn't defend itself. It simply opens a door. So that's exactly what I wrote. Short. Simple. No accusations. No guilt. No drama. Before sending it, I attached 2 photographs. The first showed our dining room. 23 place cards. 23 chairs. Everything ready. The second showed Lily's peach cobbler. Golden. Fresh from the oven. Homemade. Then I stopped. There was still one person who deserved to hear from me first. My mother. No matter what had happened. She was still my mother. She deserved one final opportunity. At exactly 5 o'clock. I opened our private conversation. And typed slowly. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. I'm not coming to the restaurant without Lily. I won't leave my daughter behind. Dinner is still happening here at 6. Everything she cooked for you is waiting on the table. Your place card is still at the head of the table. If you arrive at 6, your seat is ready. If you arrive at 8, your seat will still be waiting. Today I'm no longer choosing between my mother and my daughter. I'm choosing the table where both belong. I read the message once. Resisted every urge to rewrite it. Then pressed send. Almost immediately. 3 little typing dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. My mother was carefully composing a response. Editing. Rewriting. Just like she always did. Finally. The dots vanished. Only one word appeared beneath my message. Seen. Nothing else. No birthday warmth. No apology. No anger. Just seen. Oddly enough, that one word hurt. But it also gave me clarity. She had read the invitation. She knew exactly where her place was. If she chose not to come, that choice would belong entirely to her. I looked at the clock. 5:07 p.m. It was time. I copied the 2 photos into the family group chat. Then wrote one final message. Dinner is still at our house. 6 o'clock. Exactly as originally planned. Everything was prepared by Lily using everyone's favorite family recipes. Everyone is welcome. Children especially. I hit send. Then turned my phone face down. Mark walked into the kitchen. Raised one eyebrow. You aren't going to watch the replies? I shook my head. No. I'm not counting votes. I'm not turning Lily's dinner into a popularity contest. The invitation had been sent. The door was open. What happened next? Would tell me everything I needed to know about the people I called family. At exactly 5:58 p.m., the doorbell rang. For one brief second. Nobody moved. Mark looked at me. I looked toward the front door. Lily stopped stirring the gravy. The silence felt louder than the bell itself. I opened the door. Standing there was my cousin Beth. Her husband stood beside her. All three of their children crowded around their legs. The youngest stretched both arms toward me before I could even say hello. Behind them, another car pulled into the driveway. Tyler climbed out. His wife followed with the baby carrier. Their 6-year-old sprinted toward the porch before the adults even reached the sidewalk. Beth smiled. We were always coming here. She held up a bag of dinner rolls. I know you probably don't need these. But I couldn't show up empty-handed. Then she leaned closer. The other invitation didn't include my kids. So it didn't include me. I felt something inside my chest loosen. Not because she'd chosen my side. Because she'd chosen her children. One by one. More cars appeared. Aunt Janet arrived exactly on time. She was already taking off her coat before I even finished opening the door. She laughed. I figured you'd probably need another pair of hands. A few minutes later, Mrs. Henderson from my father's side walked in carrying sparkling cider. For the chef, she said with a smile, handing it directly to Lily. By 6:15. 14 people filled the house. 14. Not 23. But enough. Enough laughter. Enough conversation. Enough warmth. I noticed the empty seats. Of course I did. You always notice empty chairs. Especially one. At the head of the table. My mother's gold-bordered place card remained exactly where Lily had placed it. Nobody touched it. Nobody suggested moving it. It stayed there. Waiting. Meanwhile, Lily quietly tied her apron back on. She stepped into the kitchen. Took one deep breath. And became the chef she dreamed of becoming. First course. She announced with a grin. Everyone laughed. Chicken and dumplings were served first. When Aunt Janet tasted the first spoonful, she closed her eyes. Covered her mouth. Oh my goodness. She whispered. This tastes exactly like your grandmother used to make. The younger cousins attacked the baked macaroni before anyone else could reach it. Within minutes, the serving dish was nearly empty. Someone asked for more rolls. Someone else complimented the green beans. Conversation bounced from one end of the table to the other. Children laughed. Adults teased each other. Nobody worried about seating arrangements. Nobody worried about status. Nobody cared who sat beside whom. For the first time in years, our family actually looked like a family. Not an organization. Not a hierarchy. Just people sharing dinner. I kept catching Lily smiling when she thought nobody was looking. Not because every seat was full. Because the people who came were truly there. For her. Later that evening, I learned what had happened at the restaurant. Not immediately. Small towns have their own way of delivering information. Eventually, someone always knows someone who was there. In our town, that person happened to be Dolores. She and her husband were celebrating their anniversary at Antonelli's that same night. Their table overlooked the private dining room. According to Dolores, only 9 people showed up. 9. Inside a room reserved for 12. My mother sat proudly at the head of the table. Sandra sat beside her. My brother Paul and his wife attended. A few couples from my mother's social circle completed the guest list. That was it. No children. No teenagers. No noisy conversations. No spilled drinks. No laughter echoing through the room. Just polite adults. Eating expensive food. In complete control. Dolores later described the atmosphere with one sentence. It felt more like a business meeting than a birthday. Apparently, the meal itself was excellent. The speeches were brief. Everyone behaved perfectly. But twice during dinner, my mother checked her phone. Dolores noticed because my mother had always insisted phones were rude at the table. Twice. She looked anyway. Back at my house. Around 8:50 p.m. The family group chat suddenly became active again. Beth uploaded a photo. Half the peach cobbler had already disappeared. A second picture showed the children's end of the table. Juice boxes raised into the air like champagne glasses. Huge smiles. Chocolate on little faces. Then Aunt Janet posted another picture. The dining table. All 23 place cards still visible. Including one empty chair with a gold-bordered name card waiting patiently at the head of the table. No captions. No comments. No insults. Just photographs. No one from the restaurant responded. Not one word. Silence. A very different kind of silence than before. The evening slowly came to an end. Around 10 o'clock. The last relatives headed home. The children left sleepy. The adults hugged Lily before walking out. Several thanked her for the meal. Not politely. Sincerely. At 10:40, I found Lily asleep on the couch. Still wearing her apron. One hand resting on the cookbook she'd been flipping through earlier. Mark smiled. Without saying anything. He gently picked her up. Just like he had when she was 7 years old. Except now. Her legs hung far past his elbows. He carried her upstairs anyway. I stayed behind. The kitchen was quiet again. Dirty pans filled the sink. Serving bowls covered every counter. I rolled up my sleeves. Turned on the hot water. And finally, allowed myself to stop holding everything together. As steam rose around me, I heard Lily's words again. I'm used to it. Those 4 words echoed louder now than they had that afternoon. Tears finally came. Not because of my mother. Because of my daughter. Because somewhere along the way, she had learned to expect disappointment. And I had helped teach her that lesson. Standing alone in that kitchen, I made myself one promise. Whatever happened after tonight, my daughter would never again have to earn a seat at someone's table. Not while I was still alive. I wasn't alone in the kitchen for very long. Aunt Janet had stayed behind. She always did. Even when everyone else went home, she somehow found one last towel to fold or one last plate to dry. Without saying much, she picked up a dish towel and stood beside me at the sink. For several minutes, we washed dishes in silence. Then, completely out of nowhere, she spoke. You know, your mother wasn't always like this. I stopped scrubbing. Janet continued drying a plate before looking up. When Rose was 24. It was her first Thanksgiving after getting married. I turned toward her. She kept talking. Your father's mother didn't let Rose sit at the dining table. I frowned. What do you mean? Janet folded the towel neatly before answering. She wasn't considered family yet. They told her the dining room was reserved for relatives. She was married into the family. But she wasn't family. So they put her in the kitchen. I stared at her. Janet nodded slowly. She ate Thanksgiving standing at the counter. By herself. Listening to everyone else laughing in the next room. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just once either, Janet continued. It happened every holiday. Until Paul was born. Apparently. Having a son finally earned my mother a seat at the table. Janet let out a tired sigh. Rose used to joke that Paul bought her ticket into the family. Then she looked directly at me. The Whitfields ranked her. So when she finally got her own table, she started ranking everyone else. The kitchen became very quiet. For a long moment. Neither of us moved. I imagined my mother at 24 years old. Standing alone. Plate balanced on a kitchen counter. Listening to people laugh through the doorway. Feeling invisible. Suddenly. Everything made sense. But somehow. It changed absolutely nothing. I finally spoke. So she inherited the system. Janet nodded. Exactly. I looked down into the sink. Understanding where it came from doesn't make it okay. She smiled sadly. No. It doesn't. That night, after Janet left, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet. The dishes were clean. The leftovers were packed away. But my mind refused to stop. I kept replaying the same question. What happens now? Would my mother call? Would she apologize? Would she pretend nothing happened? Or would she double down like she always had? I honestly didn't know. The next morning. At exactly 8:40 a.m. The doorbell rang. I glanced through the frosted glass beside the front door. Even before I saw her face, I recognized the posture. My mother always stood perfectly straight. Shoulders back. Head high. She entered every room as though she already belonged there. But something looked different. She wasn't pacing. She wasn't impatient. She wasn't knocking repeatedly. She simply stood there. Waiting. In both hands. She carried a plain brown paper bag. I stood in the hallway for a moment. Not to punish her. Not to make her wait. I simply needed a few extra seconds. For 25 years. I'd rushed to smooth every uncomfortable moment. This time, I wanted to answer the door as someone different. The kettle had just finished boiling. Almost automatically, I placed 2 teacups on a tray. Old habits die slowly. I even smiled at myself when I realized what I'd done. Then I carried the tray into the kitchen. Opened the front door. And stepped aside. Morning, Mom. She walked inside quietly. No dramatic entrance. No immediate criticism. Her eyes immediately found the dining room. The table was still extended. The white tablecloth remained. Most of the place cards were still exactly where Lily had left them. Including hers. The gold-bordered card still waited patiently at the head of the table. I watched her notice it. Something crossed her face for only a second. Regret. Maybe. Then it disappeared. She followed me into the kitchen. Sat down. Placed the paper bag beside her chair. Accepted the cup of tea I handed her. Finally. She spoke. The family says you divided everyone. Her voice sounded carefully rehearsed. Those pictures Janet posted only made things worse. Sandra's friends have already seen them. Everyone is talking. She paused. Then leaned slightly forward. So here's what we're going to do. There it was. The familiar tone. Not a conversation. A plan. You'll write something in the family chat. Keep it positive. Say there was a misunderstanding. 2 celebrations. 1 happy weekend. And after that, we never mention any of this again. I stirred my tea slowly. Listening. Not interrupting. Because suddenly, I understood something I'd never seen before. My mother wasn't trying to fix the relationship. She was trying to fix the story. The appearance. The reputation. Not the wound. The headline. I finally looked up. I'm not posting anything. She blinked. I didn't divide the family. I simply kept our front door open. Everyone had an invitation. You included. You chose a different table. I didn't. The tiny click of her teacup touching the saucer echoed through the kitchen. That tiny sound had ended arguments my entire childhood. This time, it didn't end anything. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking for permission anymore. I was simply telling the truth. My mother sat quietly for several seconds. Then she reached for the oldest weapon she had. Guilt. It was my 70th birthday, Dana. You had one responsibility. You were supposed to be there. I nodded slowly. You're right. It was an important birthday. So important that your granddaughter spent weeks planning it. She gave you 9 hours of her life yesterday. My mother's lips tightened. She wasn't expecting that answer. Instead of arguing, she changed tactics. Fine. Christmas. Lily can sit beside me at the main table. There. Problem solved. I stared at her. For a moment, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because after everything that had happened, she still believed this was about chairs. About promotions. About earning a better place. 10 years earlier, that offer would have made me cry with relief. I would have thanked her. Called it progress. Told Lily things were finally getting better. But something inside me had changed. I smiled gently. No. Just one word. No anger. No lecture. Simply. No. She looked genuinely confused. What do you mean no? I mean, we don't need your main table anymore. Silence. Real silence this time. My mother looked at me as though I'd suddenly started speaking another language. Because in a way, I had. For my entire life. Every disagreement ended the same way. Someone apologized. Usually me. Someone compromised. Usually me. Someone gave in. Always me. This conversation wasn't following the script she'd spent decades writing. She searched my face. Trying to find the frightened little girl she'd always negotiated with. She couldn't find her. Finally. Her shoulders dropped. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to notice. Then, for the first time in years, she asked an honest question. What do you want from me? The room became very still. Steam drifted slowly from our tea. I looked at the woman sitting across from me. Not just as my mother, but as another human being. A woman who had once stood alone in someone else's kitchen. Who had spent 50 years recreating the very thing that wounded her. And yet, I also saw Lily. 17 years old. Packing away her own birthday dinner. I already knew whose side I had to stand on. I answered carefully. I don't want anything. She frowned. Not from me. We're finished talking about yesterday. She blinked. Then what? I turned slightly toward the back window. Lily is outside. She's reading on the patio. If you want to repair anything, it starts with her. You owe her the conversation. Not me. Tell her what her cooking meant. Tell her what you should have said yesterday. And if she decides to show you the menu she made, consider yourself lucky. That's all. I pushed my chair back. I can't do that part for you. I've spent 25 years translating. I'm retired. For a moment, my mother didn't move. Then she slowly looked toward the sliding glass door. Beyond it, Lily sat on the back steps with a book resting on her knees, completely unaware of what was happening inside. My mother picked up the brown paper bag, stood, walked toward the patio. I've never seen her hesitate before walking into any room. Until that morning. She paused with one hand on the handle, almost like she was asking permission. Then she stepped outside. I stayed inside the kitchen. Not because I didn't care. Because that conversation wasn't mine anymore. Some moments belong only to the people living them. Through the window, I watched quietly. Lily looked up. She didn't rush over. She didn't stand. She didn't rescue the situation. For the first time in her life, she let an adult carry their own responsibility. My mother walked over slowly. Then, instead of taking the empty chair nearby, she sat directly beside Lily on the concrete step. The same level. No head of the table. No place of honor. Just two people sitting side by side. Then she opened the paper bag. Inside was a small food container. The peach cobbler. A single serving. Aunt Janet had apparently dropped it off at her house the night before with a handwritten note. You should at least taste it. My mother also pulled out something else. A silver fork. One from her own dining set. She had brought it from home. Without saying anything, she took a bite. Cold cobbler. Made by the granddaughter she'd ignored. She chewed slowly. Then another bite. Then another. She finished every last piece. I couldn't hear their conversation through the glass. Only fragments. Small smiles. Long pauses. No dramatic crying. No movie-style speeches. Just two generations. Finally speaking honestly. A few minutes later, Lily disappeared inside the house. She returned carrying a sheet of heavy cardstock. The menu. The one she'd designed for the birthday dinner. She handed it to my mother. Rose traced every handwritten dish with one finger, reading each line carefully. Like every word mattered. Because now, they finally did. The two of them stayed there for another 10 minutes. Neither one trying to stand above the other. Just sitting together. Sharing silence. Sharing cobbler. Sharing a conversation that should have happened years earlier. Watching from the kitchen. I realized something. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes, it's simply two people willing to sit on the same step. My mother stayed on those back steps for nearly 10 minutes. Neither of them rushed the conversation. Neither of them tried to fill every silence. Sometimes the quiet moments carry more truth than speeches ever could. When they finally stood up, Lily walked back into the house first. My mother followed a few steps behind. She stopped in the kitchen doorway. Looked around the room. Then her eyes landed on me. For a second, it felt like she wanted to say something. Instead, she glanced toward the stove and quietly said, "The seasoning." She paused. "In the chicken and dumplings." I waited. She got it right. Another pause. My grandmother was the last person who made it that way. That was all. No dramatic apology. No emotional confession. Just one simple sentence about seasoning. To anyone else, it would have sounded insignificant. To me, it was enormous. I'd spent 41 years learning my mother's language. That sentence translated into something much bigger. She was proud of Lily. She just didn't yet know how to say it directly. She picked up her purse. Walked toward the front door. Then stopped. Without turning around. She quietly said, "Tell her." Another pause. "Thank you." Then she left. The following week felt strangely peaceful. Not because everything was fixed. Because it wasn't. Some relatives avoided me. A few believed I'd embarrassed my mother. Others quietly admitted they'd wanted to do exactly what I'd done. But never had the courage. Paul texted me 3 days later. "You actually went through with it." That was the entire message. Half criticism. Half admiration. Coming from Paul. That was practically an emotional speech. Sandra sent my mother a fruit basket. From what I heard, she referred to everything as an unfortunate misunderstanding. That sounded exactly like something Sandra would say. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened in the family group chat. Beth wrote, "So, when's Lily cooking again?" A few laughing emojis followed. Then Tyler replied, "My kids are already asking." Aunt Janet simply wrote, "Same table?" Lily looked over at me. "What do you think?" I smiled. "I think we just accidentally started a tradition." The first Sunday of the following month, our dining room table was full again. This time, no birthday. No celebration. No special occasion. Just family. Lily planned the menu herself. The younger cousins received new hand-drawn place cards. Aunt Janet showed up carrying dessert before anyone asked. Tyler's little boy proudly announced he wanted to help set the table. Nobody asked where they were supposed to sit. Because nobody cared. Lily simply smiled and said, "Sit wherever you can hear everyone laughing." I looked around the room. Children sat beside grandparents. Adults mixed naturally. Conversations overlapped. Nobody occupied a position of honor. There wasn't even a head of the table anymore. Every chair mattered equally. My mother came. She arrived quietly. No announcements. No expectations. She looked at the place card waiting for her. It didn't say Rose Whitfield. It didn't say Guest of Honor. It simply read Grandma. Same handwriting. Same size. Same paper. Exactly like everyone else's. She stared at it for several seconds. Thinking nobody noticed. She slipped the card into her purse. I noticed. I simply pretended not to. Some victories don't need witnesses. She missed the next family dinner. Bridge club. Old habits don't disappear overnight. The surprising part. Nothing fell apart. Dinner still happened. The kids still laughed. The cobbler still came out warm. For the first time in my life, my mother's schedule no longer determined whether everyone else could enjoy themselves. She was always welcome. But she was no longer required for joy to exist. That might have been the biggest change of all. A few weeks later, Lily submitted her application to culinary school. She let me read her entrance essay. The opening sentence stopped me cold. The most important dinner I ever cooked only served 14 people. I had to put the pages down for a minute. Not because I was sad. Because I suddenly realized. She hadn't written about rejection. She'd written about belonging. Later that evening, while everyone argued over the last piece of cobbler, Lily leaned against the kitchen counter beside me. Quietly she said, "I'm still getting used to this." I looked across the room. At children laughing. Adults washing dishes together. Nobody keeping score. Nobody earning a seat. Nobody sitting at a separate table. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Good. She looked up. I smiled. Never get used to anything less. For 25 years. I believed happiness meant finally earning a better place at someone else's table. I was wrong. The answer was never a better chair. The answer was building a table where no one had to earn one. That birthday dinner began with 9 hours of cooking. One text message at 4:15. 23 handwritten place cards. And only 14 guests. But those 14 people taught me something I'll never forget. The people who truly love you don't need reserved seating. They'll find their way to your table all on their own. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do isn't demanding a seat where you've never been valued. It's setting a new table. Opening the door. And letting love decide who walks in. The end.